Hi, I'm Brian Ball, personal trainer here at Xcel Performance. Welcome to the show, What Works, where we show you what works in the health and fitness industry. Today, we're going to be doing a side-by-side comparison of two types of resistance training. And looking at both types of training, we're going to look at the pros, the cons, and some of the common misconceptions. Because some people will kind of refrain from one type of training because they heard something from a friend, or they do not think that it is for them or that they can reach their goals through that type of training. But usually, it's not the training's fault. You just need to figure out a way to make it more difficult or easier depending on where you are in your fitness journey. Also, before we dive in, let's talk about ourselves a little bit. I want you guys to understand how muscles work, how they get bigger, stronger, how different rep ranges affect how your muscles grow, and what kind of rep range you want to do, what kind of training you want to do to reach your goals the quickest and most efficiently. So the process of getting bigger and stronger is essentially just breaking down muscle. But there are multiple types of muscle tissues and they react to different types of training. So for example, we have type 1 muscles, which are known as slow twitch muscles. These are the ones you use for endurance typically. These are like your core stabilizers, things you use for your posture, things that you kind of do daily for long periods of time. This is also with like jogging, that it kind of fits in that fitness realm. If you're lifting weights or doing any other sort of resistance training, the rep range here is about 15 to 20 reps. And again, you can still build muscle here, but because the stress on your muscles isn't as great, they are more so straining than they are getting torn apart and really having to rebuild. They're getting stretched, but they just mostly have to keep going, but they're not being pushed to their absolute limits. These type 1 muscle fibers have a lot of mitochondria and myoglobin. Now these basically just help transport oxygen from your blood to the muscles. So they have a very steady stream of oxygen that they can use to support them. So looking at type 1 muscle tissue, what makes it so different from type 2 muscle tissue? Well, it's mostly by the energy system that it's using to perform. Whereas type 2 muscles, we usually use non-oxidative energy sources. Your slow twitch muscles, your type 1s, they do use a lot of oxygen. So now going into the type 2 muscle tissues, which again, there are two of them. The first is being type 2X. The main energy system that type of muscle tissue uses is called anaerobic, which is non-oxidative energy system. So they fatigue very quickly. Basically, once you are out of breath, they shut down. These are the muscles you use for sprinting, for lifting weights in the 1 to 5 rep range, like your maximum strength. That is type 2X. Type 2A is an intermediate. What's so cool about these is they can use either energy system. So they can use oxygen if they need to, or if they are out of oxygen and they're working synergistically with your 2X muscle tissues, then they can just run off that system too. So those are kind of the intermediates. So even though there's a type 1 and a type 2 muscle tissue, there's actually 3 in total, and they all react differently to different types of training. So, now that we understand how our muscles work a little bit, let's look at bodyweight training and weightlifting and how we can hit all these different types of muscle tissues within each of these types of workouts. So let's look at bodyweight training, also known as calisthenics. So I really love calisthenics. It's a very fun way to exercise. There's a lot of different movements you can do, your core is engaged, and it feels like you're doing gymnastics, less of you're actually working out. If you are first getting into bodyweight training, if you haven't been able to do a push-up and pull-up, the good news is you will start slow. Calisthenics is a very easy type of training to progress in. Weightlifting is too, we'll get to that later. But the fun thing about calisthenics is the more strict you are with your technique, the better and more intense your workouts are going to be. For the case of a pull-up, you can kip with a pull-up, which is using your momentum, and that's usually not recommended. You could potentially hurt your back. There's having a resistance band to help you, and then eventually you'll get to a normal pull-up. And then once you get to a normal pull-up, you can do different variations of that. You could do corn cobs, you could do around the worlds, You can do an archer pull-up. So there really is hundreds and hundreds of moves, and that's just with pull-ups. There's tons of stuff you can do with push-ups, with leg workouts. So bodyweight training is a very engaged type of training. And again, you'll feel really satisfied because as you get better, you'll feel more dynamic, you'll feel more explosive, just because the more complicated moves kind of demand that athleticism. The next great thing about calisthenics really is the core engagement. Most ab exercises are already calisthenics and they are really fun to progress in, and so if you throw those alone in your routine, you're gonna see a lot of gains in your abdominal strength and your core strength. Doing things like hanging from a pull-up bar, that takes core strength. Doing a full engaged push-up, you're engaging your core like crazy. When you're doing jumps onto boxes, you need to be able to stabilize. So your core is engaged like nothing else during calisthenics and bodyweight training. It's really easy to make an entire core day for yourself with moves like front lever, L-sits, oblique raises, knee raises, things like that. The next great thing about calisthenics is it's great for the wallet, because let's say you want to have a home gym. It's way cheaper than weightlifting would be to have a home gym, because with calisthenics, at minimum, you're gonna need a pull-up bar. And I got mine at Walmart for $20, and you can get more complicated ones. You can get some that you can use on the ground as well as push-up bars. That's totally fine. But really, once you have a pull-up bar and you start working on your progressions, once you can do 10 pull-ups, you can do anything. So if you have that one piece of equipment, you have your gym. You can also get things like resistance bands to help you with progressions. You can get push-up bars separately if you like. That's good for wrist support. And as you get more and more advanced, there are some things that you can buy, such as a weight belt or weight vest and ankle weights to weigh you down when you do your calisthenics. But again, I recommend that you wait until you can do all the basics proficiently. There's other pieces of equipment you can buy, such as a suspension trainer. Here at Xcel, we use a jungle gym. I own a TRX myself at home and I enjoy it very much. But this just allows you to have a lot more exercises to do, and they are still all by your body weight, whether it's rows, curls, tricep extensions, or now if you're really good at push-ups, you can do these varied push-ups on a suspension trainer. Those will cost you a little bit more, but they are a really fun, really unique piece of equipment that makes your exercises a lot more engaging overall, mentally and physically. Another great thing about bodyweight training is that if you increase the pace, you can actually make it a cardio circuit. Things like lunges can become power lunges, squats could be tuck jumps, squat jumps. You could turn push-ups into burpees, or you could just do sprints. I mean, running itself is a bodyweight exercise if you think about it. So if you increase the pace of things, you can really get a sweat going, and you're not just building muscle, now you're actually getting sweating, getting your heart rate up, and doing some cardio. So now let's kind of get into the cons and the common misconceptions about calisthenics. First and foremost, I hear a lot is like, how am I gonna build muscle, man, if I'm not lifting those heavy weights? And they are right to some extent, because when you first start bodyweight training, if you can't do a push-up or a pull-up, like I said, you get there very quickly, and then once you get there, you have to do a lot of reps in order to get muscular gains, because usually when you get really good and you can manage your body weight, you're working again in the 15 to 20 rep range, which is for endurance. So though you are gonna get leaner, though you're gonna have muscle growth, it's gonna hit a point where it's just all about endurance at that point. They're probably not gonna get any bigger, but you'll still, again, be making developments. The way you increase the intensity with bodyweight training is you change the forms. You take things to single arm stuff like push-ups or pull-ups. You use resistance bands to do more complicated progressions. Then you'll be able to do those actual progressions one day, and then it will be really intense. You can add weight. That will change things a lot. And then the closer you can get to that 1 to 5 rep range, you're gonna be building strength. And then from 6 to 12, you're gonna be doing hypertrophy, which is muscle growth, like literal growth. Strength, you might get size, but it's mostly focusing on like 1 rep maxes, stuff like that. So you could do this with calisthenics, but you will need a little bit of that extra equipment, or you'll just need to really push yourself in the long run. But there are plenty of difficult things that people can only do like 3 reps up. The one-arm pull-up or chin-up is again a perfect example. If you don't change your form and you are doing more reps, you are gonna find that your workouts are gonna be a lot longer because you're doing more repetitions for more exercises, which equals more time. So if you do follow that plan and you do not upgrade your form or how you're putting resistance on you, you will find that your workouts will get longer while you're at the gym or at home and stuff like that. And so we know that people really cherish the time. So again, some people, even in the weight room, take 2 hours for their workouts, but it just depends on what you're working with and what your goals are. Now some people wonder about leg training with bodyweight training. Now, even if you do add a lot of resistance, your legs are one of the strongest parts of your body as far as musculature is concerned. So it could take a lot of weight. So eventually, if you do want to get really strong legs, you're gonna have to lift actual weights. However, that doesn't mean you still can't get a great leg exercise in. Bodyweight training is great for power training, so even though your muscles may not get huge, they will still have a lot of explosive tendencies now just because there's a lot of jumping, a lot of focused single leg work that you have to do with calisthenics. So even though you're not gonna be doing heavy squats or deadlifts, you're still gonna get a good workout in for your legs. Looking at your specific training is very important because that's gonna determine your schedule. And that's the nice thing about calisthenics is unless you're doing that heavy, really complicated stuff, you can pretty much do every body part every day because you're not really putting your body past a certain strain. It's handling your body, which is supposed to. So your muscles can take a little bit past that. And even when you're doing complicated things, it's still your body weight. So you can go multiple days in a row, listen to your body of course, but it's not uncommon for people to do like a couple full body days throughout the week and maybe focus on smaller body parts like their arms or their calves, stuff like that in between. So calisthenics is really easy to schedule with, again, unless you're working with a high rep range going for strength gains, because then you might want to consider doing a split routine, which is simply having different body parts on different days. Like on Monday you could do chest and triceps, Tuesday back and biceps, Wednesday legs, and then you repeat that. That is usually better for people who are really pushing themselves to the max on those days. Then they can use the following day to recover, and then by the time they reset the whole schedule, they're rested and can do it again. So now that we've cleared the air a little bit about what bodyweight training is, how it works, and how you can use it in different parts of your routine to work your different muscle tissues. Again, that endurance rep range is 15 to 20 or higher. Hypertrophy, muscle growth, the literal size, maybe not strength, but just size, is 6 to 12, and then strength overall, increase how much weight you're lifting, would be 1 to 5. So let's look at weightlifting now. I'm not gonna be going into the difference between bodybuilding and CrossFit and light versus heavy. Light versus heavy, kind of already explained. It just depends on what your goal is and what type of muscles you want to work. So knowing that, let's get right into weightlifting with the first pro, and that is ease of progression. So you're doing the same exercises depending on where your routine is pretty much every other day or every 2 days, every week, over and over and over again. So you're gonna be able to track your progress really well, and you can add weight little by little, and over a long period of time, you're gonna be able to see an increase. People can start with just the bar, just 2.5 pounds. So along those lines, we're gonna also count a pro as how easy it is to track because you're doing the same exercises and you're working very specific muscles. You can see progress very quickly. If you have a fitness journal, it's even easier to track. You can see exactly how many reps you did, for what time, or how you felt. There's plenty of different fitness journals that allow you to log this information and help you track in the long run. The next one, and the reason why all the bodybuilders come to weightlifting, is the muscle isolation. If you have exactly one muscle you want to work on, you want to give it growth, you want to give it strength, weightlifting is the way to do it. Even though you're engaging, for example, biceps in a chin-up, you're still using a lot of your latissimus dorsi to help get you up, and yes, your biceps are engaged, but when compared to just a standard bicep curl, that is all on the biceps. There might be a little bit of synergistic help from the back, but it's mostly just the biceps, especially in something like, say, a concentration curl. Now you're really cutting off that supply from the synergist and really focusing on just the bicep, extending and contracting. Now weightlifting, your core isn't necessarily engaged as much as bodyweight training, mostly because there are some weightlifting workouts like the bench press or the seated military press or shoulder press has you supported by a bench, which kind of takes away core engagement from you, and so you aren't seeing engagement overall as much as in calisthenics. But what you are seeing is a very unique trait, which is called bracing. So bracing is when essentially you're tensing your core to brace your spine so it doesn't bend out of control while you're doing something like a squat or a deadlift. These two are particularly fond of bracing in the abdominal area because, again, there's no bench to help you support yourself, so you have to make sure your spine's straight, engage your back, engage your core to follow through the entire exercise. If you're still not quite sure what bracing is, it's a contraction of the muscles to resist force. In the case of lifting, we'll say again the deadlift, it's the force downward that you're trying to fight as your spine is trying to stay straight up. So looking at some of the pros and the misconceptions that people have about lifting, first and foremost this is the one I hear the most, is weightlifting is going to get me bulky, or I don't want to get huge. People are often too afraid of great men, but figures such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Sylvester Stallone, all these like very big movie stars and wrestlers and stuff like that. And they are big and they are weightlifters, but they're usually very specifically bodybuilders, and that's their goal. So they are eating a lot to do that, they are lifting heavy to do that, and they are training their bodies for that specific body type. But that doesn't have to be you. You're gonna train for your specific body type and for your specific goals. The whole thing with resistance training is when your muscles are being activated and engaged regularly, not only are they growing bigger, but they're growing leaner and they're devouring even more calories. So you're going to weigh a little bit more on the scale because muscle is denser than fat, but you're gonna look a lot better and you're gonna feel a lot better because your metabolic rate is gonna go up as you increase muscle activity. Remember, all muscles are created equal, but they are to be trained differently in order to see the best results and to get to your goals the fastest. Resistance is resistance, and whichever type of training works best for you or gets you most active, or simply you just enjoy, that's the one that you should be doing, because you just have to modify and change and take your time with anything in life, but especially with lifting and calisthenics. It's all about your technique, it's all about patience, and most importantly, it's all about believing in yourself. If you guys are interested in a nutrition or training consultation, please contact us at Xcel Performance. We will have a link in the description below. Please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for your time.